Catherine Weissenberg is an author, speaker, communication facilitator, and consultant. For the last 3 decades, she's worked as a communication consultant and facilitator with individuals, groups, and organizations. And when the COVID lockdown began in March of 2020, Catherine knew that folks would become frightened and isolated. She had been a longtime member of Word and Life community here, so she created Word and Life and Friends, a free online community that meets monthly for learning, discussion, and connection. And this continues to this day, and they've already hosted over 120 guest speakers. So maybe something we want to look up online, Word and Life and Friends. Catherine did her undergraduate and graduate work at UCSB in communication, and she has taught communication at Santa Barbara City College for many years. She is an author, a published author. Her book title, Beyond Ever After, A Heart-to-Heart Journey Through Death and the Afterlife, which you can obtain from Chaucer's or from Amazon. Catherine is committed to supporting people's self-discovery, learning, and self-empowerment, and remembering the truth that they are designed for connection and love. It is Catherine's belief that we are all gifted with the ability to communicate and connect with each other, with our very selves, and with spirit. She has dedicated herself and her work in facilitating these connections. In addition to hosting Word and Life and Friends, many of our residents know her as a prayer chaplain at Unity of Santa Barbara. And you can learn more about Catherine at her website, beyondeverafter.com. So please join me in welcoming Catherine Weissenberg.
Nonverbal communication. And I have to start off with a big disclaimer, because when Laura told me the title of the talk, I said, I can't do that. How to read a face like a book. I said, I'm sorry, I got nothing on that. But what I can do, because as you know, it's not that easy, right? We're not books. How many of us would like to think we know each other? And I've read your book. You showed me the book, but it's not that simple. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to empower you to remember that what I'm saying to you is something you, each one in this audience, sitting where you're sitting, you are an expert at nonverbal communication. You may not know what it is, but you've been doing it for your whole entire life. And some more masterfully than others, granted, but today what we're going to be doing is talking about what is nonverbal communication. And as we go through these different types of nonverbal communication, what I'd like you to do is just think about yourselves as you're going through this, because this might explain a lot of things you've encountered in your life, and thought, has anybody ever said, do you want to come over? Well, sure. Any of you ever got those kinds of, not you because they want to come see you, but you know what I'm saying? So what we call in the study of nonverbal communication is any communication behavior other than written or spoken language that creates meaning for someone. So I said some words. I said, yeah, sure. But my nonverbal sent another message, which was what? No, I do not want to come. No, thank you. So that's where we're going to be diving in today. And so I've got a fun exercise for us to do, and hopefully this will be interactive and not boring. So what is nonverbal communication? It's the relationship we're going to be talking about between verbal and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal messages, just like in the example I just did, they work with the verbal message and they can contradict it, and when they contradict it, what do you pay attention to? Oh, she said she wants to come over. Yeah, okay. But did she really? So we're going to be launching into that in more depth. So nonverbal communication, I'm going to be covering all the different aspects and channels of that and what nonverbal communication can do for us. So nonverbal communication can repeat the messages we're already sending. So for example, I say, do you want to come over? Yes, yes, right? Do you see how I'm using my kinesics, my body, my gestures to reinforce the message? It's repeated. And so do you believe me? Do you want to come over? Yeah, yeah, right? I'm doing some other things about that too, but it can also substitute for communication, for verbal messages, i.e. words, right? So anybody recognize this? How about this? Yeah. All right. That's nonverbal communications. Communication can serve as a substitution for verbal, right? It can also complement a part or the combination of a message. So, say a child gets a new toy and it's like, I'm so excited, I want to open it. We just went through Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas, right? So that complements the message. It's not repeating it, it's not substituting it, but it's complementing the message. The other thing that we can do with nonverbal communication is we can accent a part of the message. And we're going to have some fun with that later. But that is, am I going in and out, or is it just I think I'm going in and out? Okay. How many of you are educators, teachers, retired teachers, or people? Okay, some hands are going up. You are probably really good at nonverbal communication because you had to read the room, right? You had to have eyes on all. So accenting is this idea that where I put a pause even. Now, we're going to be we've studied nonverbal communication. It would be wise of you to probably look again at the definition of accenting. So I'm stressing, I'm putting a little attention, a little accent in a certain area to call your attention through my nonverbals, regulating. This is a fascinating thing. And when we talk a little bit more about it today, hopefully you'll become a people watcher and kind of watch people interacting at a distance. But we regulate the flow of our communication. If I'm talking to you and you're making eye contact with me, which says I'm listening, you could be leaning forward if we were at a table together. And then what happens if I'm ready to stop the conversation? What do you do? Do you notice? Do you say like, oh, I'm really tired of hearing whatever you have to say. I'm done, right? Forget it. We send messages non-verbally to say, we call them lead-taking behaviors in the communication world, but we may look away. We may sort of look at the time. We may start wandering around and, so we use our nonverbals to help toss this invisible ball of, now it's your turn to talk, now it's my turn to talk, now it's your turn to talk, now it's my turn to talk. We don't say, you talk, Joe, and now I'll talk, and I've talked, now it's your turn, Joe. We don't do that, but we can have elaborate conversations. And how does that all work out? And think of also when somebody's interrupting and they're not clued in. But kids are great at this. You're on the phone and right? But they're sending the message non-verbally. I need to tell you something right now. I need the turn. I need the floor. So nonverbals can do that. They can also contradict, and we call messages can be congruent, where the nonverbal and the verbal say the same thing. They're congruent. They're both saying the same thing. So, do you want to walk the dog tonight, honey? Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I'll do it. Yeah, I just congruent. I'm not, or I guess, right? Do you see how that, and what do you believe? What do you think I'm really saying?
You don't really want to do it.
I really don't want to do it. So those messages we call incongruent messaging. And when we are confronted with an incongruent message, and it can be so subtle, we believe, what do you think? The words or the nonverbal? Right. Deceiving. Sometimes our nonverbals can be deceiving. How many of you have communicated that you wanted to do something, you loved a gift you received? I'm not telling you to be rude and make your friends mad, okay? I'm just pointing out that sometimes we mask them, or we attempt to mask our true emotions. And nonverbal communication is very powerful in communicating how we're really feeling about something, not just to the other person, but also sometimes to ourselves. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So with that in mind, what is this thing called nonverbal? What constitutes nonverbal communication? Right? We like to say that if you are awake and moving, right now, the person next to you, you can observe them as well as me, obviously, but they are giving off information. You're giving off nonverbal cues, how you're sitting, what your, all different kinds of things. Are you, I wish I would have got some more of that snack in your mind, how long is this thing going to last? So we are continuously giving off these signals, these nonverbal communications, where with verbal, we actually have words rolling out of our mouth. So that is a big, big difference. But what are some of the nonverbal communication channels, we call them? Body cues. Or facial cues. Or we use distance. If I move into you, do you start to get nervous? Like, why is she close to me? What's she doing? I mean, no, you're not, because I couldn't harm you in a public place. But anyway, but we can use distance, touch, right? And we're going to be talking about the impact of COVID. When we were apart, we didn't touch each other. If you lived alone, you didn't have, those of us who have pets were like really loving those pets up. But touch is another way in which we communicate. A hug, a pat on the hand, you got that, an attaboy, slap on the back, or atta girl. So touch is another very powerful way we communicate, as well as our appearance. If I would have come to this talk with the outfit I had on this morning when I was walking my dog, or my dog was walking me through the neighborhood, you would have thought one message. And if I would have showed up in that sweatpants, my sun hat, my glasses, my little dog bag with you would be, what? So I purposely dress nicely for you. And if you saw me in the grocery store, I probably wouldn't look like this. But appearance, artifacts are nonverbal types of communication. And that can be like the white coat the doctor wears, right? Or the police badge, or things like that that tell you something about that person, what they do, communicate something about them. And then voice. So the tone of voice, and we're going to talk more about that. But did you know when you're just communicating, you're using all these channels? I mean, so what we're going to do today, and eye contact I'm going to talk about, is we're going to slow down this process that you and I do without ever realizing it. That you are reading me. Right now, you're watching me, hopefully. And if you're not, that's okay too. But you're making some decisions about me. You're getting some, oh, seems relaxed, or oh, whatever you're doing. You're not necessarily getting that from my words. I'm not saying, I'm relaxed and I'm so happy to be here speaking to you. And I've been looking forward to it. And I'm very comfortable talking in public speaking settings. I taught it for years to students. But you're observing my behavior. You're observing my posture, the way I move, the tone of voice. My voice is not like, well, today we are going to talk about nonverbal communication. It will be so thrilling to you. Okay? So, anyway, so voice, we're going to talk about that too. So, let's dive into these different areas. Body cues. It's a big field. Kinesics is the study, if you go to study communication, you can study, and you've heard like people say, the trainers and athletic trainers say, I studied kinesiology. When we say in communication kinesics, it's the study of body movements and posture and gestures. And these are not universal. So what I'm talking to you about today is very specific to quote unquote American culture. If we were from a different country, these same behaviors could be very interpreted in a very different way. So let's go through those. We have emblems, which are hand gestures that are specific and commonly used. So I did this one, this one. That idea that you know what those things are. And it's a specific gesture. And most people in our culture understand what those are. There are some other ones, which I will not use, but you also understand what those gestures mean. So there's also illustrators, and illustrators are this idea that they can complement a message. So, for example, with me, I talk with my hands a lot. I talk with my mouth a lot, so much to some people's chagrin in my household. But anyway, so we do those, and those can either contradict, like I can say, well, I illustrated some of the accent complement. Illustrators are those things that complement the message, or that we constantly kind of use, and we don't think about it. I don't say, like, I'm going to say, well, go over there and walk 10 paces, and then you're going to see a tree on the right and go to the left. Do you see how that I am reinforcing, in a way, that message by illustrating, right? And you do that. Oh, get it out of the top kitchen counter. It's way in the back, way in the back. Okay. So we are doing all of that. And what that does is it helps us understand the message. And I'm not thinking like, oh, I got to show them exactly what cabinet, but I do this. And that's what I want you to think as we go through. You're doing these behaviors. You're using these cues. You've been using them your whole life. And sometimes sometimes you're not consistent with your message. We use adapters, which is how many of you, if you're nervous, anybody? If you're nervous, you pace. There's those people that I sometimes, when I used to go to a movie, I haven't been to a movie since 2020. I don't know about you, but I'm staying out of theaters. But they bounce their legs, right? The leg bouncers, or the fidgeters. And I'm not saying I'm a picker, I pick. If I'm nervous, I'm a picker. So we all have our things. I self-disclosed to you, and she's videoing it. So please, please don't think I'm weird. I'm just a confessional here. Regulators, we talked about those, the nonverbal behaviors that help control the flow of our communication. You're sitting at lunch with your friend, they're leaning forward, their hands on the table, tell me more, tell me more. They're making eye contact, or they're, kind of moving like they got a little bit uncomfortable. And affect displays. This is the big area of nonverbal communication, in that we display the emotions we're having through our bodies. Okay? So, how many of you see someone and you're like, are you not feeling well? Because you're picking up, and they haven't said, like, oh my gosh, you can't believe I didn't get any sleep last. They haven't told you a word, but you're looking at their body and their posture, and you go, they're not, right? They're fatigued, or they're sad, or someone is happy. Do you notice sometimes when somebody's like, whoa, you got to be in your bonnet? What happened, right? They haven't said anything, but they're communicating non-verbally that they are happy. They're excited about something. They're energized. So body cues are important. Now, did you ever think that you're looking at somebody's body? I mean, I'm telling you this now. Have you thought, like, oh, I'm observing that they're sitting very. Do you ever break it down like that in your own mind? Have you? But have you been using this? Have you been using this information without think about how much it saves us from having to say all this stuff, right? So we're reading the cues. We're paying attention. So body cues, posture. The other one is how we use distance. So there's this man who's called Edward T. Hall, and he studied space. And he came up with this theory that they've studied and has bared over and over, that we have like space bubbles, like we're in a little bubble, right? And our intimates, our children, our people, our husband, wife, people, 0 to 1.5 feet. We let people get into our personal space. If you consider, I have an imaginary bubble, and then what happens? Have you ever had somebody in line, the grocery store, like get all up in your space? Like they're like putting their stuff down and they're kind of moving against you and moving up, because they're violating your space in a sense. And people have different ideas about what this is. Personal space, friends and family and colleagues, probably about from here to here, and we're comfortable. You talk to your friend, next time you're talking to your friend, kind of pay attention to how far apart are you? Or if your friend who usually you're close to, it's like, hi Marge, right? And it's not. So we use space, and space, how close we let people come into our personal space tells us something about how much we trust them, how intimate we are about our relationship with them. Social groups, 4 to 12 feet, group interactions. If you ever have gone somewhere and you're in a circle and having a conversation where, they put people in group circles, or public space, 12 or more feet, one-to-many interactions. So I'm a distance from you. What happened in COVID to our personal space? It expanded. And so, how did that feel? Or how did it feel after you had been around people to be around people again, to have them come into your space again? Did it feel weird? Was it like, I don't know about this? But something that you would have paid no attention to, perhaps, unless somebody was violating your intimate space, coming too close. None of us paid really as close of attention to this idea, did we? And so then we had to get used to having people in our space and deciding and even more so deciding what was safe space, right? We all had different levels of comfort. So proxemics is this study of how we use space. And it communicates something. Sure.
I just have an observation about touch that I still find myself, like, I was raised to shake a hand and have a firm handshake, but sometimes I approach someone now and maybe they prefer not to because it could be spreading germs.
Right.
So I know some people do the
fist bump. Yeah, we're going to talk about touch. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. And that's another thing that really changed. Yes, sir.
I have an observation about space too. My son has 2 dogs, and during COVID, they observed adults keeping more space around. And now, when people approach closely, these dogs get very territorial all of a sudden. They'll growl, and if someone comes too close to him. And the same thing with my great granddaughter. I got my first hug from her about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And she's 4.
Wow.
Because she's been in a different world.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you so much. And that's interesting. And maybe if we had growls when we first went back to being around people, we might have been like, like, oh, Marge, I'm so glad to see you. And you will also, I want you, if you can, pay attention to, this in the dining room. Notice not like everybody has to be like, oh, you went to that talk. I'm noticing you have people watching. But if somebody is coming too close to a person, they'll do this. You and I, when we don't go, right? We might have during COVID, but we kind of take a step back and we lean back because we're trying to adjust where our body is and how close people are to us. Appearance and artifacts. So this is that idea. Did I skip one? Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, I thought I skipped touch. Haptics is the study of touch. So this is that idea that touch is another and very powerful channel of nonverbal communication. They've even done studies where if people were there's a whole area in communication called persuasion studies to see how you can be more persuasive. And they have found that if you just gently, before COVID, when we weren't touching, if you just gently made contact with someone's skin, their compliance rate rose. Just to have that brief of a touch of connection. Those of us who are parents, think about the bonding with your child, right? Or even with animals. There was, and teachers probably know this study very well, called Harry Harlow did this Rhesus monkeys experiment where he took these little monkeys away shortly after they were born, and it's kind of sadistic, but I don't want to give you bad dreams, but then he would put them back with, after they were born, with a wire monkey, a wire mother monkey, or a cloth monkey. And they needed to have that closeness and attachment to bond and develop. So being touch deprived, how did you feel when you couldn't touch people? I mean, did you notice a difference in your mood, in your way of connecting? I mean, I think your story, sir, about getting to hug your granddaughter for the first time is very moving, because we communicate so much through touch. If someone's sad or upset, do you try to talk to them with your words? You may, but what else do you do? Give them a hug. What else? Anything else that you do? You may pat them. You may stroke them, squeeze their hand. You're okay. You're going to get through this. So it's important. So touch can emphasize our words and certain things, jerking a kid. We're going. Come on, walk. Walk. I said walk. I do that with my dog sometime, who has to say hello to pick up its female. Communication, it communicates affection, hugging, stroking, all those kinds of things. We can assert ourselves. We can assert dominance through touching, just as we can through space, by the way. So the person you can look at people at a distance, and you can observe, the higher powered person, or your boss might be okay to touch your shoulder. Did you get that done? Are you going to get that? But you wouldn't go to your boss and, hi, how was your weekend? Okay. So there's norms for touching, and they show us the power differential. They can reveal a lot. Just touch, whether who touches as space, distance. The higher power person can come into your space, and it's okay. But if you went into the higher power person's, the boss or the other person, space, that would not be okay, right? You wouldn't roll up to your doctor and look over their shoulder what they're doing, right? So maybe, well, hopefully you've got a doctor, you don't have to do managing interactions. It's this turn-taking thing. It's you and I go back and forth. It's like there's an invisible ball going back and forth. And sometimes touch is used to manage the interaction. Right? Gotta go. Again, all these things are very subtle. As I'm going through them, do you realize, are you thinking, I'm doing that? I never paid attention that I was even doing it. How many of you are like, duh, but I never thought about it that way, right? Okay. And as Laura shared with her experience with touch, again, right now, we still are trying to suss out, is it okay to touch or not touch? How many of you get information from people when you meet them and you shake their hand, right? Now, may be true, may not be true, what you're concluding, but firm handshake, soft handshake, how long someone holds the hug. You ever get the hug that you're like, okay, all right, we hugged. Okay, let it go. Okay, right? So anyway, so it can communicate a lot for us. Appearance and artifacts. This is this idea that I mentioned already, is that, and especially in Western culture, especially in our culture, appearance is everything. or not ever, I'm not saying that, but we put a big emphasis on it. Most of including me, I'm a senior citizen too, technically. How many of you feel like you're not seen as much because you're older now? You know what I mean? Like, and, or you have grandchildren and appearance is everything, right? The haircut, the latest haircut, the nice clothes. And I use the one that I got dressed up for you. So people are evaluated on how they present themselves. And we know that, right? And hopefully, and at least I feel this way, it's become much less important for me, my appearance. You know, it's like, well, so, you know, I'll get dressed up for special things, but not like I used to be way more conscious of it. And artifacts, this idea that an object can communicate something about you. The car you drive, the purse, the badge, the everybody. Oh, I didn't get my cell phone out of my purse because I have a real clock. But how many of you have seen the cell phones, right? They are the status symbol for certain sectors, right? So yeah, I mean, having the latest cell phone. So, and people also, you know, might have a logo or a shirt like skaters or, you know, I don't know. So what of the mask?
Yeah,
Does that communicate something to you?
a lot.
What does it communicate to you?
Keep away from me.
Keep away from me. Yep. Or I may be, but could that be accurate or inaccurate? Could they be wanting to keep you safe? I'm not saying, I'm just saying, but you raise an excellent point, is that we do say, this is sending me a message and I'm interpreting that message, which may or may not be what the other intended at all. I may be like in the middle of a cooking dinner and realize I have some ingredient that's essential, and I've been out in the garden and I look, you know, like heck, and I run into the store and I'm in a hurry because I've got this stuff on the stove. And so, but somebody could say, whoa, what happened to her? Or whatever. So, yes. So, just because we are interpreting these things, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in a little bit, it doesn't mean we're interpreting them accurately. But you're right, the mask is a great one, and you're way ahead of me. So stay tuned. I'll give you the $5 after the presentation. So, facial cues. All right, here we go. Facial cues. There's these things called micro expressions. And do you know your face? People actually study this. They videotape it, they analyze it, is capable of making 250,000 different expressions between your forehead, your eyes, your mouth, your nose. Some of you are making those faces now, right? So, and there's 6 primary universal emotions in all this analysis that pretty much are consistent. And why I picked something with, I just had a good image that showed men and women. So sadness is revealed in our face, anger, disgust, fear, surprise, and happiness. So, and you see some illustrations. Happiness, typically a smile. Sadness, it's the lower. You should, well, next time I do this presentation, I'll get this gentleman to be my model and we'll take some pictures of him. He's got it down. And disgust. What? Just imagine, close your eyes and imagine you have just stepped in the biggest pile of dog dirt. Yeah, well, some of you are smiling because it's funny, but discuss, ooh, surprise. Surprise, eyes get bigger, right? Surprise and fear sometimes can look very similar. Contempt, anger. Notice that anger is a lot, the face gets very tense, the eyes get smaller, and then fear, of course. We never feel these. Now, here we go. So, what happens when I do this? Probably you can't hear me. The mic doesn't work anymore.
No, it works.
Oh, good. Okay. So, what happened to my facial expressions? So, what happens?
Very good.
Don't communicate as well.
I don't communicate as well, but what happened to your ability to receive any message? Do you rely more on the rest of me? And then it's COVID, so I'm sticking the heck away from you. And I don't know if you have it or you don't have it. And I'm getting further away, and I'm a little tense because it feels weird to be around people. So this really does it feel different right now? Just that on off. And we did that for a long time, a really long time. Because we rely on these nonverbals. We're using them far more than our conscious mind. We're just like, you think a computer's fast? This baby in all of us, bloop. And for all of you, you have such a vast experience of this kind of communicating with people in different situations, in different contexts. And so when we put on our mask, we lose the ability. Now, for some of you, did it kind of feel good? Did you kind of feel good not to have? Were you surprised after you got used to wearing the doggone thing? Was it kind of, I can just sort of be safe in here, right? So, facial cues, big area, big area. And you know what they do? They bring people in labs because, of course, they get all this data from universities and studies that they do, and they bring people into a lab and they videotape their faces. And then they mark all the different things, like one person codes for the eyes and one person codes. So this is very, very intricate, detailed work. I didn't ever do a study like that. I wouldn't have had the patience for it, but I appreciate the people that do. Eye contact. Eye contact. So big. Really a big area. And how many of you wear glasses? Right? I got glasses on. What happened? Whoa, yeah, they steam up. And now, because you can't see my eyes and you can't see my face, and the eye contact is so important to acknowledge the presence of another being, another human. And how many of you, through your mask, made eye contact with people? You could see them, and it was like our eyes met. In that moment, it was like, there's another person here, right? We use our eyes to express interest. To look at someone to say, I'm interested, right? Because if you're like, I have a daughter who fortunately is 26 now, but man, she had a long run of this. I was the stupidest person on the planet. I've graduated finally in her eyes, but eye rolling. How many of you? So that's a little bit different. Or you're trying to tell somebody. How many of you have ever said, look at me? If you're a parent, you've probably said, look at me when I'm talking to you. We use our eyes to also assert dominance. The stare down, right? The look. Attraction. Do you know that when you're attracted to someone or even attracted to the message, your pupils dilate? People that actually studied that. More so if you're really attracted to them in a different kind of way, but that really makes your eyes dilate. But dominance is another way. Again, talking about eye contact is you can tell who the most powerful person in the room is, or perceived more powerful, because they're the person that gets most of the eye contact, right? Again, using the employer-employee, you listen to your boss, but your boss can be not listening, right? Doesn't have to look at you. Well, I'm talking, get da 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 da. So eye contact and then respect. Giving you my eye contact and looking at you says, I know you're here. You're important to me. I recognize you. Even if we're walking out here on the sidewalk and we see someone that, is coming by, to say hello, and not just to say hello, hello. I mean, it's sometimes we're in a hurry, but to look at someone, hi there, hi Judith, right? Or hi Judith. It feels different, right? So eye contact and regulating the conversation. We do so much in our interactions with eye contact to say, it's your turn to talk, now it's my turn to talk. We're doing it all a lot through the eyes. And if I'm talking and I want to keep the floor, meaning I want to not have you start talking, I'll look away. I have a friend who does this incessantly. She's a real pauser and she looks away, but she looks away for a really long time. But we use our eyes, and then you will visibly see, if it's your turn, I'll look at you, and it'll be this micro expression, one of those 250,000 that cues you, oh, it's my turn. Oh, now I can talk. Or now I'm invited to talk. I have been handed the floor. So the regulation of conversation. Again, nonverbals are so important in this regard. So I'm seeing what time, and I really want us to get to the exercise. Sorry. The voice, vocalics, our tone of voice, the tone. You know the tone, don't you? You know the tone when you get the tone, don't you? You know that. Don't use that tone of voice with me, right? Rate and speed. Well, and then we went here, and then we got in the car, we drove there, and I didn't know what we were doing. It was just so, and then we ran out of gas, and I couldn't. Okay, those kind of pitch. Oh, right. People who are excited, it goes really up high. And, oh my gosh, you should have seen what the kid did today. Volume, how loud or quiet people are, right? What's wrong? Nothing. Are you mad? No. Right? Silence is also a very powerful communicator, is it not? How many of you are proficient at the silent treatment? Or been on that receiving end of it far too long? I'm going to give you a little clues about that. So often it's the voice, we call them the paralinguistics. The linguistics are the word. Paralinguistics is all these vocal attributes of what we're doing. So we're going to have a little fun now. We're going to do a vocal exercise. So I want us to kind of go through, and I'm going to just ask you if I'll just point to somebody who I know who probably won't be like, don't pick me. So you seem like you're a participant. So can you read the first line and stress the
I
oh.
did not kiss your sister.
Say it.
I did not kiss your sister.
All right. Okay. And would you be willing? Okay. Can you read the next one?
I did not kiss your brother.
And can I?
Did not kiss your brother.
All right. And how about that lady back there, if she's willing, a willing victim?
I did not kiss your brother.
Ah, all right. And then just go to somebody, Laura, whoever you want, they can do the last line.
I did not kiss your brother.
All right. Same words, get it? Right? But is it a very different message? Very different message. So now we're going to have a little fun. And Laura's going to hand out an envelope. She's going to start. And I want you to use your nonverbal decoding and encoding, meaning you're creating a message. And I want you to take one piece of paper out of the thing and keep it down, face down on your legs. Don't show your partner because we're going to work as a partnership. And I'm going to have you turn it all over at once. So what I'd like you to do is everybody get a card, and you don't have to look at it yet. Just keep it turned down and pass the envelope along, and everybody take one. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I want you each have a quote. You each have an instruction about an emotion to share when you read that quote. And I want you to think about the nonverbals we've talked about. We've talked about tone of voice. We've talked about our face, our facial expressions. I would not suggest you touch anybody right now. So forget that one. Your posture. Use all those channels. And what I'd like you to do is partner up and notice who your partner is. And if you don't have a partner and you're solo, raise your hand so we can, one of us. Okay, so this lady, lie in any message. Who determines the meaning of a message?
The receiver.
The receiver, absolutely, right? It is not what we say necessarily. It's how we say it. It's the context of our relationship. Meaning lies in us. So I don't want to make you miss dinner. Whoops, back. So takeaways, we won't have time for that because we're running up on our time, but I just want to highlight some considerations for you. And I've included this quote, when the eyes say one thing and the tongue says another, a practiced man, and we're going to add woman as to that, relies on the language of the first. But I'm not going to change Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote. But this idea is, for us, what happens when we are communicating. If we're the one that is assigning the meaning, then we have the onus on us if we don't understand what could we do. We could assume, and you know what they say about that, if when I assume thing, I won't say that because she's videotaping, but it's this idea that non-verbally, now you know you are sending messages you aren't intending to send, right? I am giving off messages all the time, and so are you. And sometimes I'm strategic about that, but most of the time, I'm just being me and I'm going through life and I'm doing my thing. And so my own nonverbal messages not only communicate things to others, I communicate to myself. How many of you have kind of noticed that sigh a lot? You're sighing a lot, and you're kind of slumping. And you think, oh, geez, I must be tired. You didn't think like, I am tired, but you can observe your own nonverbal communication for your own self-awareness. Anybody have these repetitive circular arguments in their lives with people? Maybe you don't. I will fess up. And this idea that you want to talk to somebody about something and they said, I know you know, I am listening. And you're like, you don't listen to me. I don't feel like you're listening. I am listening. I'm listening. I'm listening. Here, I'm listening. Okay? So, and then you just say again, it doesn't seem like you're listening to me. And they're like, I told you, I am listening. So that's an opportunity sometimes if you want a tool to have is to do what we call a perception check and say, I know that you said the word you're listening, but you know, your voice is raised and your arms are over your chest and you keep looking at the clock. And I don't feel like you're listening. Or if you're going to have a difficult conversation, you do that in a place where you can converse. You think about the distractions around. Some of us, myself included, have visual issues. I have vision problems. I have low vision. So I may not, I don't see well out of this eye. So if I know that, I may want to be in a place where I'm close enough to see the other person's face, right? Or I'm in higher light because I don't see well in low light. So we're not going to a restaurant that's dark. Also, notice if you get feedback from people that they're saying something about the way you're communicating. And this is got to get your big girl and big boy panties on for this one, right? And they may be talking to you about, you know, I feel like you don't respect me, or you're not showing me, you know, any respect, or that you don't care, or whatever it might be. You might make that inquiry to kind of be self-aware of your own nonverbals. Or what is it that I'm doing that makes you think like, how am I behaving? They don't have to come to the nonverbal talk to have this conversation with you. But it may give people information. It may give us information about things we are not aware of that we might be doing in our communication with others. And if you're a brave soul, you can ask those questions. And, you know, because in the morning, I just feel like you drink your coffee and then you go out of the room and that's it. And you're gone. And there's no conversation. There's no, hi, honey, you used to hug me. You don't hug me anymore, whatever it might be. So there's cultural differences. We all learn a lot of these nonverbals we learned in our families, right? The Weissenbergs are big huggers. I'll hug people. But some people don't want to be touched. They are not huggers. Get away, right? So it's being sensitive and watching and looking for these cues in all those different ways. What's their posture like? Are they looking? Are they looking away? Are they averting their gaze? You're doing this. Slow down the train and you're forming impressions of people. You're reaching conclusions about them and they about you. And the more that you can use the nonverbal cues to accent, complement, supplement, the stronger those important messages can be. So I gave you a lot. It was like speed round and nonverbal communication, but I encourage you to celebrate that you know how to do this, that you are doing it. You are doing it in your own ways. and start kind of observing people. And I guarantee you're going to be sitting in the dining room and see two people chatting, and you're going to see them lean forward and look, and you're going to notice this like wonderful nonverbal dimension of the communication opening up. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you for having me, and I'll let you go.